Of Edinburgh, His Royal Highness Prince Philip did endure a remarkable strength and stay alongside our beautiful monarch of 70 years, Queen Elizabeth II. But even now, a couple of years after his death, sadly, there are still people speculating about his, well, shall we say, romantic interludes, his romantic natures. How true were they? Was it all made up? Was it great publicity? What did he truly think about it himself? As ever, let me explain. Hi, good morning. Neil Sean here in the very heart of London. And as ever, thank you so much for your company. Nice to see you today. I wanted to highlight this because recently I managed to uncover an interview that I undertook with a former lady who had something might say a bit of an association with, of course, the Duke of Edinburgh, His Royal Highness Prince Philip, a rather infamous association, I might point out. But recently we've seen on that new episodes of The Crown, they've been sort of trying to how shall we say, push the fact that perhaps His Royal Highness Prince Philip was not necessarily the dedicated husband to our wonderful monarch of 70 years that he liked to portray. I've spoken to many people who were very close to the Duke of Edinburgh who told me this, that he absolutely loved that particular reputation. As he pointed out, until he got married, he never realized apparently what an attraction he was to the female species. He said, it never happened before, but suddenly now he's assigned to the world's most famous woman. Suddenly all women found him attractive. Of course, he was a very much a modern man who had a reputation of having a lot of female friends. But according to that good source, that was simply it. They were very good chums. And most of those chums were, also friends with the Queen herself. So there was nothing really to fear or worry about. What's fascinating here, though, is a few years back now, I was lucky enough to meet a particular lady, Pat Kirkwood. She was an international British film star from the 1940s and early 50s. She was billed with the $1 million legs, apparently, the eighth wonder of the world. A beautiful girl with a very salty, earthy sense of humour. Now, the infamous story is that Prince Philip, along with a lot of chums, went backstage to the Hippodrome Theatre in Leicester Square in London to see a performance. And because they got on so well backstage, they ended up dancing till at least 5 a.m. That's right. And this is how that particular story took off. Now, by the time I met Miss Kirkwood, she was rather elderly, living in West Yorkshire, married to a retired banker, a very famous one, I might point out. Very rich indeed, as she also pointed out. But as she told me in the latter part and the later stages of her life, she basically had to endure a rather bad side of publicity because a lot of people then didn't want to employ her because at that point it was seen as rather negative to have such an association with such a senior member of the British monarchy. As, of course, the years rolled by, she told me that she quite liked the infamy surrounding that particular story. But at the point, as she said, they were simply nothing more than good friends. He was very much a dedicated family man who was very much in love with Queen Elizabeth. But as she pointed out, he didn't mind confusing the media because, after all, who wouldn't want to be known as a bit of a Lothario? She said that he really admired movie stars like Tyrone Power, Errol Flynn, and the way that they were able to just brush off these scandals. And that's something that he also adopted. So when these new books come out in the next part of the latter part, should I say, of this year and early next year about Prince Philip and the alleged infidelities, all I can tell you is I literally met the woman of the moment, who was literally embroiled in this scandal in the late 1940s, claiming, of course, that she was the paramour on the side, at least, of the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip. But as she pointed out, it was simply innocent fun, and she could not believe that she'd been attached to such a story for over 50 years. But as she also added this, which I thought was really telling, let's not forget, she said, sometimes it cannot actually do someone's career any harm. As she pointed out, the celebrated actress Lily Langtry was able to really push herself forward, go on world tours, be renowned as an international beauty, and become the face of Lux soap. So she said, not every association necessarily turns out bad, but in her mind and her memory, there was nothing to it. And more importantly, she cited that Prince Philip himself was very much a dedicated one man, one woman family man. So let's not forget, of course, that when you speak to someone who was in the real thick of the story, whatever TV shows like The Crown and books wish to do, you have to take the word of the person who was there. And Pat Kirkwood was definitely there. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.